This Sunday, God has allowed us to see the first Sunday and the last Monday this year. Amen. Amen. You go with me to the book of Samuel. I'll be reading from the New Living Translation, and also be listed on the overhead projectors as well. But David kept thinking to himself, someday Saul is going to get me. The best thing I can do is escape to the Philistines. Then Saul will stop hunting for me in Israel territory, and I will finally be safe. So Achish finally summons David and said to him, I swear by the Lord that you have been a trustworthy ally. I think you should go with me into battle, for I have never found a single flaw in you from the day you arrived until the day when the other Philistine rulers won't hear of it. Please don't upset them, but go back quietly. What have I done to deserve this treatment? David demanded. What have you ever found in your servant that I can't go and fight the enemies of my Lord the King? Well, Achish insisted, as far as I'm concerned, you're as perfect as an angel of God. But the Philistine commanders are afraid to have you with them in battle. Now get up early in the morning and leave with your men as soon as it gets light. So David and his men headed back into the land of the Philistines, while the Philistine army went on to Jezreel. Amen. You may be seated. Amen. Father God, we thank you for this time of year that is called Advent, the expected arrival, the expected coming of our Lord and Savior. Take it not for granted, Father God, that you blessed us to come this far. See many of us up and down the highway this past weekend and week. And some are still traveling. So God, we just thank you for your traveling grace and mercy. For I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I that live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and delivered himself up for me. I pray that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. God, I studied, I prepared, I prayed, now I need you. In the name of Jesus, amen. For just a few minutes, I'd like to talk about what was I thinking as we continue this series of sermons dealing with the heart of God, the heart of David. Have you ever had some moments where in retrospect you think on some decisions you've made, some connections that you've made, some people that you know, some places that you've been, and some opportunities that you took advantage of. And now, in hindsight, you wonder, what in the world was I thinking? You knew it wasn't in your best interest. You knew that it wasn't going to work out for your good, but curiosity got the best of you, and something caused you to do something, and honestly, you are grateful just really to be in church today. Matter of fact, that the person who is on your pew knew every decision you made. They knew every place you've been. They knew the people who you are connected to. You'll probably be seated all by yourself. Some of us can be honest and testify we've done some things that we know God would not be proud of. And it was only through the mercy of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ that we was able to survive some bad decisions that we made. That's what's happening in our text today as we continue this narrative of David. He's grown a lot since we first seen him in the pasture. David is tired of looking over his shoulders. So David goes and joins up with the mortal enemy of Israel, the Philistines. And at the conclusion of chapter 29, we see that if it was not for the Philistines' rejection of David, David would have fought against his own country. David was released from his obligation not because David made the right decision. As a matter of fact, we read in the text, David really was a little frustrated that they did not want him to go to war with them. But God looked out for David's best interests. How many of us, if we look back over our lives, we could testify, I made some David decisions. David was at a point in his life when he thought the best thing for him to do was for him to team up with the mortal enemies of Israel. God wants to know, can I trust you even when you get frustrated? Even when things aren't working the way you want it to work out. God says, can I trust you when you are frustrated in your own faith? Can I trust you when you are beginning to lose hope and what you said you would never lose hope in? God says, can I trust you when you have nobody else to give you the answers that you want to hear? God says, can I trust you when you have nobody else to trust? He says, I know you've been hurt. I know people have let you down. But God says, can I trust you to be the person I created and crafted you to be? David could have forfeited his God-ordained future by fighting against his own people. But God released grace on David. Anybody in the house can say you're grateful that God graced you through some situations that you know you couldn't get yourself out of. You got yourself in, but you couldn't get out of it. But for the grace of God. Just 3 short points, and we won't hold you long because I know y'all got leftovers you need to finish eating. Number 1, check the motives of our decisions. In 1 Samuel chapter 27, but David kept thinking to himself, someday Saul is going to get the best of me. The best thing for me to do is escape to the Philistines. Then Saul would stop hunting for me and I would finally be safe. And I guess my question is, when you and I make a decision, what is our motives? What motivates you to come to the decision you come to? David is tired of Saul coming after him. And David makes the decision because of what him being tired of Saul. He says, I'm going to go and submit myself to the Philistines. And this ain't the first time that David has tried to do this and it didn't work out. It didn't work out in 1 Samuel 21, and yet he goes and tries to do the same thing again. And by the time I will tell you how many of us understand that perhaps the reason why it didn't work out the first time is because God didn't allow it to work out. And maybe it's not working out this time because God is not allowing it to work out. And you keep wondering, why does things seem to be hard? Why does it seem that every time you make 1 step, or 2 steps, you take 1 back? Maybe God is saying, I don't want that to work out for you. I know it's what you want. I know it makes you feel good. I know it looks good. It may even taste good to you. But God says, that is not what I want for you. And because that is not what I want, I don't care how hard you try, it'll never work out. In chapter 26, Saul has made up his mind that he ain't even chasing David no more. And even in chapter 27, even though Saul has decided, I'm not thinking about David, I've given up on him, David has it made up in his mind that Saul is still after him. David is on perpetual defense against somebody who ain't even chasing him. I'm glad somebody called me. How many of us have our own Saul ghosts? You think somebody's talking about you, and they're the furthest thing from your mind. You think because me and Harris hang out and laugh, you think we laugh about, but really we ain't laughing about you. You think because I'm on the phone talking to somebody that I'm talking about you, or because I post something on social media that has something to do with you. You got to realize that people can, you can create your own ghost in your own mind. Folks ain't even thinking about you. You got to realize you ain't the only somebody that God has put on this earth. You got to realize that folks can have a conversation without you and I being in anybody. You and I have to realize that we are not so important that every time somebody look at us, they talking about us. I'm just talking about what's in the text. 26, Saul ain't thinking about David. But David still assumed Saul is chasing him. David has created a scenario in his mind that doesn't even exist. And David, here's the bad thing about the text. David ain't talking to nobody else. David gets input from nobody else about what's going on in his life. David has a conversation with himself. And when you have to have a conversation with yourself, and you're the only one that can approve the conversation you have with yourself, your approval probably going to be wrong. But the worst thing you can do is have a conversation with yourself and come up with your own approval. I know you're smart. I know you're intelligent. I know you got it all figured out. I know you can quote every scripture in the Bible. I know you can do all that. But whenever you start having meetings with yourself, I'm telling you what the Bible says, that there is wisdom and wise counsel, which means I got to get the right people in the right situation to give me the right answers to my question. That's why it does you good not to be the smartest one in your circle. You got to have somebody that knows a little bit something more than you. You got to hang around some folks that can help you when you're not only in good situations, but sometimes when you find yourself in the valley, you got to have some folks that you can reach out to and you can touch, and then they ain't gonna always agree with you, and you know that you ain't gonna fall out with them because they don't agree with you. You got to realize you need some folks that's gonna rock with you when you're good, when it ain't so good, when they see it your way, when they don't see it your way. If you ain't got nobody in your corner like that, honey child, you really don't have anybody. David says to himself, I'm going to die. I'm so miserable, I'm going to die. And this is the same David who was anointed by Saul. And he's saying, I'm going to die. This is the same David who wrote over half of the Psalms. And he's the same one that wrote the 23rd Psalm. He's the same one that Jonathan told him, you're going to be the next king. And David, you thinking you're going to die? Things have gotten that rough in his life that he's forgotten the provision and the promises of God on his life. I know you're going to say you won't say it out loud, but sometimes many of us will let situations cause us to forget about what God has promised us. I don't care how rough you get in your life. I don't care how dark you get in your life. Don't you ever let nobody come in your life and make you forget the things that God has promised you in your life. I know it gets rough sometimes. I know sometimes you may think you're all alone, but what you all always remember is what God says, I have plans for you. Anybody here know the plans that God has for your life? And when you know God's got plans for your life, I don't care what devil come your way. I don't care what imp or imp come your way. You know God well enough that you can say, God be for me. He's more than the whole world against me. I got at least one witness in the house that said, yeah, you wrote me home. Yeah, you didn't think I was going to win, but I remember what God put in my heart. And when God put it in my heart, the old folks used to say, this joy I have, the world is giving to me. What's sad about this text, this is God's son. But if you look at chapters 27 and 29, you never see the name of God mentioned, not once by David. You can go through 2 chapters of the most terrible, fearful time of your life, and you never talk to God, you never mention God. And the only time God is mentioned in chapter 29 is by the enemy. The only time he's mentioned is by the Philistine king who says something about David's God. This David, you fought your life in the name of God. And now that things are looking rough, you forget your enemy? Whatever you do, don't let your enemy spend more time with your God than you do. When you're not connected to God, you'll always make the wrong decision. Many times we fall because we fail to seek God's face. Please, whatever you do, I don't care how dark, if you don't remember nothing else, please stay connected with God. Whenever it's all about you, you and I will always make the wrong decision. My grandfather used to always tell me when he would cut trees, he would say, John, I say, what? He say, don't you ever cut a tree in the winter? I say, why not? He said, because that's the worst time to cut a tree down. I said, why? He said, all I'm saying is the worst time to make some decisions is when you're in winter. When it seems like everything else is down around you. When it seems like you have nobody else to talk to. Sometimes you need to just sit back and wait until you hear from God. Too many times we rush and we're so hasty about getting an answer and we'll run headlong into something and God ain't said a word to us. Secondly, don't confuse success with being in God's will.
Amen.
Yeah. No.
1 Samuel chapter 27, verse number 6. So Achish gave him the town of Ziklag, which still belongs to the kings of Judah to this day. And they lived there among the Philistines for 1 year and 4 months. David and his men spent time raiding the Geshurites, Gizites, and the Amalekites, people who had lived near Seir along the road to Egypt since ancient times. David did not leave one person alive in the villages he attacked. He took the sheep, cattle, donkeys, camels, and clothing before returning home to seek King Achish. David shows us in this text you can be successful and still be wrong.
Amen.
That David shows us you can be blessed and still out of place. David is a warrior. That's who God created him to be. David is good at what he does. David is good at what he has been created for, even though he's out of the will of God. He's still winning some battles, even though he's in Philistine country. He's successful. And I learned that you can be gifted and in the wrong place. David was fighting the enemies of Israel, but he was lying to the king, and yet he's growing in favor with the king at the same time. He's totally wrong. He's lying, but yet still he has people fooled that make him think he's for them, but really he ain't for them. And so what he does, he ends up being successful, but it ain't by God's will. You can be in the wrong place. You a false seller? Is that what they call it? False seller. I can hear the false seller. But don't ask me to hold a note. You see, some of us can make stuff look good just for a little while. Don't mean you can hold that note. Don't mean I can hold an E flat when I can play with one. Just because you can play with some stuff, don't mean that's the stuff you ought to be with. Now, y'all ain't gonna help me preach this thing and that. You got to realize because it look good, because it looks like you successful. I see what you're driving. I see what's in the parking lot. I know where you live. I see, but that does not mean you are successful according to the will of God. You have to realize, even though you're successful, that does not mean you're in the will of God. Some of us will try to make things work that are not right. Success does not equate God's will. You can be successfully wrong. You got to know you can be successful because that's who God gifted you to be. God gifted some of us to be some beautiful singers, and we ain't got nothing in us but the devil. You got to know it. I didn't know the choir was all the time. Now we must learn discernment in the season we're in and be faithful to what we know God has called us to be. Third and finally, embrace the freedom of God's exit strategy. 1 Samuel 29, verse 6 and 7. So Achish finally summoned David and his men. I swear by the Lord, he told them, you are some of the finest men I've ever met. I think you should go with us, but the other Philistine rulers won't hear of you. Please don't get upset, but go back quietly. What have I done to deserve this treatment? David demanded. Why can't I fight the enemies of my Lord the king? But Achish insists, as far as I'm concerned, you're as perfect as an angel of God.
Yeah, Lord.
But my commanders are afraid to have you with them in the battle. This is amazing. God has to provide a way out for David. The future king of Israel wants to fight against the people who he's supposed to be king of. And what's crazy about this, David is so gung-ho about fighting for the Philistines against his own people, it takes Achan to tell them, that's not your assignment.
All right. Come on.
David is so all the way gone. Yeah, he's so all the way gone. He's just gone. I don't know if he was the Kush, I don't know, but he's so all the way gone that in his present moment, he's forgotten his assignment. And don't he realize that if he would have fought against Israel, do he realize the long-term ramifications that would have had on his calling? Can you imagine David being on the battlefield against Saul, and Saul loses his life? Can you imagine that blood that David just said last week he didn't want to have on his hand? Now he puts that blood on his hand. How could the future king of Israel fight Israel? How can brothers and sisters? Verse number 4 and 5. But the Philistine commanders was angry. Send him back, they demanded. He can't go into battle with us. What if he turns against us? Is there another better way for him to reconcile himself with his master than by turning on us in battle? Isn't this the same David about? There they go again. Them women. Even the enemy know them women. Isn't this the same one that the women said Saul killed his 1,000 and David killed his 10,000? They said, David, you got to get out of here. We heard what your women sung too. We know what they said. Here's the blessed thing. David is rejected. God used rejection for David's benefit. God allowed some situations and some people to get rid of him in order to keep him from going where he wanted to go. I said that to say this. There's grace in rejection. God is using rejection to rescue David. David has purpose. He has promise. But God created a scenario for David to be rejected in order to keep David from making a bad decision. Okay. All right. Okay. Maybe I'll say it like this. Have anybody ever been rejected from anything? I mean, you really thought that thing was going to work out? And you find out now that was the best rejection you ever had in your life? Does anybody realize that rejection can be a blessing? Have you ever had a job that rejected you? Now you had a job that's blessing you? Okay, y'all don't know nothing about that. But have you ever been with somebody and they broke your heart? They made you cry boo-hoo tears all night long. But now 20 years later you see them, but they look like, you got to keep them. And you thank God, I thank you every day for having her reject me, because what used to look like a Coke bottle now look like a milk jug. You ought to help a brother. You feel like you feeling it. God can bless you with some rejection. You know he looked good. He had wavy hair. Now he just went home for Thanksgiving. He had a one go-to. Still wear black heels and black fork. You do realize that sometimes the best thing that ever could happen to you in your life is rejection. You don't believe me? The Bible tells me that somebody came down through 42 generations. Mary's baby. God's only begotten son. Matter of fact, the Bible says he was the chief cornerstone. Didn't they reject him? Didn't they reject our Lord and Savior? You got to know they rejected him so much that one pride. They hung him high. They stretched him wide. They took him down and put him in the laboratory. That's rejection, but they didn't know that. Sunday morning, you got to know that after rejection, there's always a resurrection Sunday. Anybody in the house been rejected, and now you can testify. You put me down on Friday, but early Sunday morning. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, God. Thank you for being a vessel. Thank you for watching out over us. When we was too foolish to watch out for our own sake. You saved us and helped us for sometimes. Had not been for you. There's somebody here who do not know Jesus Christ and not have a church home.
you're just on temporary assignment, you're coming on the watch there, you desire special prayer, you can also come at